Awesome. Well, I am joined here with Hatch. Both Mark and Sean from Hatch are joining me here today to answer just some pressing questions. Today's webinar is really on rehashing old leads on Autopilot. So, it's taking that stale data that's been sitting in your CRM system. Maybe your call center has called the heck out of it. And it's, some companies go, I've tried to contact that lead about 30 times or 50 times or sometimes more than that, unfortunately. And they haven't answered the phone call. They are dead leads to me. And but so they just sit in that CRM database until maybe you get the lead back again, or it refreshes at some point. Or in most companies' cases, that dead lead file, that stale lead file, just compiles and compiles and compiles. And it takes some serious intentionality to get anything out of it. And even when your sales team, your call center is just, let's say you're dead in this season that we are in the winter here, most companies will take that old list and start rehashing it and try to reach out to them. But calling is, as we all know, is only so effective when people don't answer the phone. I rarely ever answer my cell phone. And when I do, half the time when I don't know the person on the other side, and sometimes when I do know the other person on the other side, I'm disappointed in what I get on the other side of the phone. So I would always prefer personally to get a text message in any form of communication. Even the vendors I talk to, I prefer text message and always ask them to text me over call. So I think that's kind of where we're headed with this. And with this webinar here today is just dive into what does texting look like in that. But the goal of all these webinars is for you just to grab one nugget to walk away with here today. But without further ado, Mark, Sean, I'd love for you to introduce yourself and even share a little about your background at Hatch and even what you did beforehand here too. That would help you helpful context.
Sure, go ahead, Sean. Why don't you start?
Yeah, so I'm Sean here with Hatch. I lead the sales team over here. Been here for probably around a year now, but beforehand, I've been working with small businesses, helping them with growth, via marketing technology. And before that, I was in the home services space with my family that owns an interior remodeling company.
Right on. Yeah, that's my background is I've been working with local businesses for a long time, going back about 10, 15 years. Got started in the SEO, PPC, website development space, kind of local marketing, Google My Business, going back to the late 2000s. So done a lot of work with telecommunications from all with the background of growth and sales and marketing tech for local businesses. So from texting to phone calls to even direct mail mixed in there, all focused on helping local businesses grow most efficiently and get the most out of their marketing budget. So, and here at Hatch, I am the VP of product. So I work on kind of setting the requirements for how our product works to help people get the most out of the leads in their CRM databases to grow and close more deals.
Awesome. Well, let's dive in. How my first question for you guys is just how are companies using Hatch in SMS marketing in general to re-engage stale leads?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what I think is the most important thing is you have to make it conversational. There's multiple different ways that people would do that. And there's different ways that people mark a old stale lead in their CRM. It's either a canceled appointment from a long time ago. It's a lead that they purchased, or, they acquired through a website form or a Google ad, or it's prior customers. And it's about uniquely identifying that information and targeting them individually based off of what their interest was. But most importantly, making it conversational. So if you're able to reach out as if I'm reaching out to you, Sean, at mass to provide that response with a low barrier of entry, people are bound to reply. So whether it was, let's say 6 months ago, someone filled out a form, a lot of people put those things on hold. You're just simply trying to get that reply to start that conversation again.
So what does that reply look like? I think from just a tactical standpoint, I think I've seen the text message blasts, and I get them from from my Cutco guy that I bought knives from a year and a half ago. He's doing texting, right? But it's the special offer of winter is here, and Christmas specials, you can get half off your, whatever, your knife, right? And it's It's like I hit snooze on that message. I'm not even engaging with that message. So like, let's talk about like tactical. What does engagement look like? What is a conversation starter that is less, he even put my name in my text message. He was like, and CC'd my wife on it. So it's like, that's a pretty personalized thing. I still didn't engage. But so what does that look like from an actual like engagement, and that at scale as well?
Yeah, that's a good question. So engagement, I think a large portion of what I see people try to do is they try to convert like an email campaign into a text. And I think that's part of the battle, right? You want to make sure you display all of the information within your company in one snap, and you don't have to. Simply making it like, hey, Sean, you reached out to us 6 months ago for a roof replacement. I wonder if that project's still on the table. If it is, do you have a few minutes to chat? That's going to drive a much higher reply than some Black Friday sale that may not exist within their company, or it may exist. Those should be reserved for maybe past clients, maybe evangelists of yours, for like a customer appreciation campaign. Like, hey, we serviced your windows on the first floor 2 years ago. Right now we're doing a customer appreciation only campaign. Those types of things are going to exhibit a different response. So the responses are quite high, even with a nurture, whether it's a yes or a no. It's either you're closing the door or you're starting a new conversation with an individual. Like, yes, that project's still on the table. We're a month out. Now, at least you have a timeline where you can actually reach out to them with a specific next step.
Yeah.
If I can pile on to that, I would just say, especially if we're talking about rehashing leads or deals that you have in the pipeline or their old leads, at this point in time, these people already have a relationship with your company. I would think about, like Sean makes a really good point about thinking about your SMS campaigns as more conversational rather than traditional email campaigns, which are more like, here's all the information that I have or the best offer that I have, and let me help you try to create a transaction. With SMS, it is more conversational, and you're going to be further down the sales funnel when you're talking about rehashing. So these people, when you reach out to them and say, hey, is that project still on the table? Or if you're closer to where you set that quote and maybe it's going cold 2-3 days after sending the quote, make it conversational. Just a short question of, hey, did you have a chance to look at the quote that I sent? Or, have you gotten any other quotes? You know what I mean? You can quickly tease out what the objections are by making it conversational rather than trying to put every piece of information that you have out there. With SMS marketing, and I think, Sean, you touched on this last time we had the webinar, the first goal is to get a response and get that conversation warm again. And that's what I think the Hatch product really does better than anything I've seen on the market, is it will warm up all your conversations. And our customers say, hey, you turned everything that I do as a sales and marketing team into inbound. They don't have to spend time chasing down the cold conversations because Hatch can warm them up. Once those conversations are warm, we put them back to your closers, especially in that sales rehash thing. And I'm sure we'll get into some of the AI stuff later, but the best tool that most companies have at their disposal to close more deals are their experienced sales reps who have been closing deals for years, right? So how do you couple the technology and the automation to get the conversation back into the hands of a sales rep who has the best chance of closing that deal? And I think that's what Hatch does really very well.
Well, I think you hit on something there, Mark, too, is that your sales team, that's where sales and marketing can kind of get, we're very separated, marketing and sales, and marketing's going to try to draw the interest over here and get the customers in the door. But sales often has the language and the linguistics to actually get response and to get the right response from a person when they're in the sales process, right? So I think that just piques my thoughts here of like even thinking about like from sales books that I've read of like Steven Schiffman is all about like get corrected, like just throw something out there so that people would engage back to you of going like, are you still doing that windows? Is that you were just doing like 20 windows on that project? You're at your home, right? You wanted to do 20 windows. Are you still doing that project? No, it was for siding. It's like, even if it was something that is getting the homeowner to actually correct you and go, no, it's a project for siding. Do you guys do that? It's going like, that's engagement. That's the first letter of conversation. So it just makes me think of like, it's pulling the sales, methodologies and linguistics and how you communicate to try to get corrected, even as a part of that closing technique. So it's like that's the interesting, like, in ways to be able to, again, get engagement creatively, just using some of the, like, that's what cold emails and SDRs do all the time to get our interest when via email, even as to get corrected.
Sean, I think you're probably best suited to answer this question. It says, can we go a little more in depth in what Hatch does? Do you want to just give the quick overview to answer Michelle's question?
Yeah, absolutely. So Hatch works with people for multiple different reasons. Consider a sales funnel. At the top of the funnel, you have new leads coming in. The middle of the funnel, you have people that are quoted. And then the bottom of the funnel is people that were quoted, ready to buy, and maybe have already purchased. So where in that funnel do you have a leaky bucket? And where do we have to plug it? So oftentimes people come to us and say, I don't get to my leads quick enough. And if you do not get to your leads within the first 5 minutes, your likelihood of getting an appointment decreases by 900%. So what we do is we take that same conversational marketing and we plug ourselves into your lead sources, and we'll automate that outreach within 5 seconds and typically drive like 80 to 90% engagement based off of how they came to you. Second part, I would say, is everyone has a very talented sales team. What sales reps, including my own, struggle with is follow up on the quotes that they give. So they're at appointments all day long. And unless they have the allocated time to reach out to these clients through means that they will respond to, like that conversation typically goes to die. So typically what we do is 48 hours post quote is we will automate that outreach. So for every 10 quotes that you have, we'll drive 8 conversations, 8 more at bats. So at the end of the day, it's really about at bats. You cannot sell around an objection unless you know the objection. So if I can deliver you that, and then I can put that in your sales rep's hand, he'll be able to overcome and sell it. Multiple different things with nurture strategies that we're here to discuss today, like database mining, like based off of how they were engaged with you, or even some post-sale information, like keeping your customer happy. I think that's also very important within our industry, since there's such a dark time when someone purchases to when you install.
Yeah, and Lucy, you had asked a question here too, is what do you guys consider an old lead? So I think every company, in my experience working with home improvement companies, is everyone considers a stale lead different points. I've seen companies who are like, that lead is dead to me after 7 days and 7 contacts. And I've seen other companies who literally it's 50 contacts in 90-day period of time before they even put them on a longer kind of drip sequences. And it really goes into a long-term rehash lead campaign. So it depends on different companies. In my mind, if someone raises their hand, as you get, especially when we're talking high volume leads, or if you're doing a home show or whatever that is, anyone who raises their hand should be in a long-term nurture campaign, unless they turn off, they reach out to you, said that they moved, or that the project is 100% complete and they have no other projects that you can even service in their home. Let's say you do baths and baths only. They should stay on your drip email campaign via email, text message, and phone calls, and until they tell you to stop. So
I agree with that. I am a stale lead for at least 3 landscaping companies in my community here. And I will say this, I got quotes from 2 of them. And then that was at the beginning. That was at the beginning of this landscaping season, right? I reached out. We've got a big project we want to do. I want to say that, the quotes we got were anywhere from 10 to 20K, right? So it's a big project, and I think very valuable to these companies. But what happened is we didn't end up doing the project at all, right? We looked at kind of the cost of materials earlier this year, and we said, you know what? We don't need to do this right now. We're going to wait. So the need still exists. Later on, we had the person who's doing landscape maintenance at my home here, and we talked to them about it, and they quoted it in the fall. And they said that they were going to get the job done. We have a quote. It took a while to get the quote, but we have one. But they weren't able to get to the project this year. So what do you think would happen if the 2 companies that quoted me earlier this year reached out to me and said, hey, do you still have a landscaping project that we can help with? I would say absolutely yes, because everyone is dealing with volume problems right now, whether it's materials delay or labor shortage. everyone is taking a long time to get things done. It's very expensive. So these needs, especially right now, Sean, to your point, these needs are going on for a long time and they're not necessarily getting fulfilled. So I would agree with what you're saying. So Lucy, to answer your question, what is an old lead? It kind of depends on what type of strategy you're going for. We like to put sales follow-up campaigns in place. So like Sean's saying, your sales reps are most valuable working active deals because that's what they're good at, handling objections, working with people, talking to people, finding out what those needs are, putting a quote in front of them that will close, right? Well, if that quote goes out and then 2 days later you don't have any activity on it, it's not old, but it needs to be warmed up again. You know, you need to reach out to those people and like Sean's saying, tell us what your objection is, right? Whatever it is, do you have other quotes? Are you not happy with the price? Did we not include the right items? These are the questions to ask them. Every sales rep that I've seen, once they have an active, warm conversation, they can work that deal and they're happy with that. But they're not following up on these conversations that are going cold. And that's really one of the things that Hatch does best. But like Sean is saying, if it goes 2 days in Hatch, what you can do is you could say, follow up on my quotes 48 hours later. And that puts them into a campaign where 48 hours later, they're getting a message. If they still don't respond, the day after, you're following up with a different message. And then 5 days later, 7 days later, and you're testing out, hitting them in the afternoon, right? At the end of their workday around 5 o'clock. At lunchtime, are they available then? Are they available in the morning before they have to work? So you're trying to figure out when can I warm up this conversation based on that cadence and based on what's living in your database today. That's sales follow-up, right? So it's a lead that's going cold, but then you get the other leads into these long-term nurture campaigns because not everybody is getting their jobs done, especially the ones that are more elective. So I think Sean talking about putting them into long-term nurture campaigns, that's a great idea where you're hitting them monthly or quarterly until they tell you no.
Yeah, 100%. I think one thing that is often overlooked, and I mean, I come from a marketing background, and I think whenever you deep dive into marketing campaigns, is that like it is extremely complex, and especially as you get more and more sophisticated and you generate more and more leads, is that you need to have sophisticated campaigns for the brand new leads, and you're going to treat those people differently for that period of time, the first 2 weeks. And then after that 2 weeks, you're going to treat those people differently based on if they responded or engaged or didn't engage, or they need callbacks and so forth. You're going to drip different content, different things based on that. It gets complex quick. Same with after a sale, after, pitch misses, demo, no sales. You have individual campaigns for each one of these. And it can get complex, but the most important thing when it comes to follow-up of any lead period is just like you said, Mark, is everyone's at a different stage in their buying cycle. And you have to meet them where they're at and kind of anticipate that sometimes that's a 2-year nurture, that's a 6 months nurture, that's a 12 months, 6 months, whatever that looks like, and kind of set campaigns up accordingly to make sure you're going to speak the right language to the right customer. So that's just the nature of our complexity of buying today of any large ticket item, which is home improvements here. So let's pivot over to kind of talking AI. So obviously we've all read articles when it comes to artificial intelligence. So we've heard the Facebook stuff and Meta and all the, like, we're going to be replacing Windows in some alternative universe somewhere. I don't know, like, well, home improvement's going to be all different somehow. But let's talk about AI when it comes to texting and obviously Hatch, you guys set up campaigns and there's automation there. So first let's just talk about the difference here between what's automation and what's AI. Let's just make the distinction really quick, and then let's dive into some like practical use cases.
All right, Sean, is it okay if I take that question?
Absolutely.
Okay, so when we're talking about the difference, it is really tricky. I mean, what is AI? What is I? What does intelligence mean? How do you know? What are your sales reps going through and doing on the daily basis? So the first thing that I will say to set the stage for talking about AI, you really need to focus on your regular eye, your human-based intelligence. What are they doing and what are they doing well, right? Because there is no technology out there today that can handle every conversation that you want to throw at it. This is an emerging technology, and the advancements that we've seen recently with some of the biggest cloud technology players, and this is where you're going to see it take off, is Google's in the market, Amazon's in the market, IBM's been doing this since, they had Watson win Jeopardy way back in the day, right? So it's definitely come a long way over the last few years. But automation, I would define as something where you provide the instructions, right? All of the instructions. So an automated piece of where Hatch can help out is, let's look at the appointment date in your system. And 2 days after the appointment date, when you're trying to close a deal, the status is demo no sale. And we're saying automatically reach out to that person to ask what they thought about the quote that we sent them. That is automation. Something that is AI would be a little different. And you're going to see a lot of it's essentially a race to develop the best language models and artificial intelligence among all of the conversational platforms. We are in that. We have competitors that are in that. There are a lot of really cool tools that are available at our disposal. So just to give you a sneak peek about where Hatch is heading and the type of thing that we'll be releasing and testing out this year, which if you're interested in testing out and getting on that list of people who are leveraging it, get in touch with me or Sean, right? Would be like lead qualification and scheduling. So let's say a new lead comes in. Do you really need a sales rep to handle that conversation of gathering a few data points about the job, and then when are they available to chat with a sales rep? That is something that we can teach a chatbot to do. Now, they're going to have to figure out, the chatbots, the technology is going to have to figure out what's the intent of this message. What's the sentiment of this customer right now? And I think the way that you should think about this is everybody's thinking about chatbots and AI and doing things automatically. Don't think about it as like a fully autonomous robot that's going to handle every conversation for you. I think there was a company bought in the insurance space, bought by Allstate way back in the day, Esurance, I think. And they had a great tagline: technology when you want it, people when you don't. And this is the thing to understand about AI, is there is no artificial intelligence in the world that is going to get every conversation right. That should be easy to understand because there's no regular intelligence that's going to get every conversation right. Think about the different deals that come through your pipeline. Some reps are best suited to handle different types of leads, whether it's very complex or even like the difference between commercial and residential, right? You have different reps who can handle different deals and different conversations most effectively. So think about your artificial intelligence as we're especially headed into 2022. I think that we're going to see some really amazing advancements in what we can do automatically next year and 2023 and in the future. Think about it more like an exoskeleton, right? You think about the movies that you've seen where you have the soldiers wearing like the big robot suits. It allows them to do more, be stronger. They don't have to look at those conversations until it's ready for a human. So every AI, think about these metrics. How often can it successfully complete a task, whether that's gathering information, scheduling an appointment, or closing a deal, right? If your regular intelligence reps can close 30% of the deals, 40% of the deals, whatever they are, your AI is not going to be able to close 80% of the deals. It's going to be able to do a part of what your regular reps can do. And what it should know to do is give both the consumer and the rep and the artificial intelligence itself the ability to escalate that conversation to a human and say, like, I don't know what to do here. Let's have you talk to somebody. And so you don't necessarily need to lead the conversation and say, like, hey, you're talking to a bot. But if it comes to the point where the bot doesn't know what to do, it needs to have an escape hatch to escalate that conversation to a human who can handle the conversation, because they're really always going to be smarter and more capable than the bots that you have. Does that, Sean Coughlin, does that resonate with what you're seeing?
I would agree. Yeah. The common thing like that, you hear just from customer conversations every day is, can it replace or can it do, like, no. Can enhance? Yes. So I think that's like an important distinction. Like, can it create appointments? Yes. Does it replace somebody that's actually, creating that appointment? Maybe not, but it's going to make them a lot more efficient.
Yeah, and I think overall, last week we interviewed One Leg, marketing here too, and we've been talking about kind of 5.9 and their AI that they've kind of added to the scripting components, things like that. It like the AI is there to enhance. Like, I think, like, knowing how hard it is to run a call center today, period, to find good people to run a call center and to have consistency there. You have one caller setting appointments at one rate and taking the same leads for another caller that's making difference. I think that's where you can create more consistency. I think to your exoskeleton is like, how do we create some more systemized and formulaic ways to make sure that our set rates are consistent? How can we maybe do a little bit more with fewer people in the call center making dials to these leads as well? It's not going to replace, but I think it will enhance that process and hopefully make it a little bit more streamlined. It's because there's best practices there.
I think it can, that's what I would look for out of AI tech. Can it lower my potentially human costs? Can it make them more effective, right? Can I spend, hundreds of dollars on an AI that can handle a lot of things, maybe 80% of the conversations, and then pitch the other 20% back to my call center? Those are the type of metrics that I think that we should be looking for and looking to improve. The one thing that I would say is, like, even though when we're talking about focus on what regular I can do, right? Intelligence, what are your reps doing? And what are the things that reps can do that an AI can't traditionally do? So like an example would be, and this is actually one area where I think Hatch excels very well compared to a lot of the competitors in the space. So Hatch does a good job pulling in integrated data from your CRM, from your lead ags, and being able to use that information to enrich the conversation. And this is an area where you're going to see Hatch going deep in the coming year, right? Because what your rep can do, when somebody asks a question about a quote or like a specific line item on the quote or an appointment or the date and time, your rep can say, oh, okay, well, I'm going to go to my scheduling tool, whether it's Google Calendar or if it's embedded in your CRM, they can go and look it up and say, what's my availability? Well, can your bot do that too, right? Can your bot go look at the availability and then leverage the knowledge that is available there to enrich the conversation? Can your bot go look at your quote, look at the line items, look at the total, right? Look at the terms, whatever it is. Look at the date that it was sent. Can your bot do that and use that information to enrich the conversation? There are so many SaaS tools out there to help make this process easier and better. How do you get quotes out faster? How do you make sure that they're accurate, right? How are you? The bot ecosystem right now is not necessarily based on integrated data, and that's what Hatch is doing. We started with the integrated data, and now working towards having this artificial intelligence be able to leverage that integrated data and pull it into the conversation. That's something that people are happy with, because what people don't like, we've all been consumers, right? When you get approached with a conversation that is clearly automated and not contextual, doesn't come at the right time, doesn't contain the right information, how does that affect your feeling towards accepting a quote from that company? It makes it feel like they did the bare minimum. Not only are they not getting it right, they're almost making it worse. Yeah. And you have you start to trust that company less because you think that they're kind of just scraping by and they're focused on their process rather than my needs and coming with a solution to the job that I want to get done.
Well, I think 100%. I think, Amber, I think this kind of probably hits your question on the head of just like, how does the complexity of a project, like asking qualifying questions about maybe how many windows do you want replaced is like, that's a pretty simple question to ask in like an AI, like before I book this appointment, how many windows you want replaced? If it's 3 or more, perfect. We'll put, like, here's the link. And versus like talking about deeper questions about bathrooms or sunrooms or all that kind of stuff, you have to ask a lot more deeper questions. So let's say even going to like kitchen remodels, all that stuff, budgetary criteria, is that, just as you mentioned, Mark, is that AI is not going to replace the human component. And that's a fine line there of making sure that you're using that automation to automate and artificially be able to walk through a customer through the things that are very simple tasks and are simple communication, but like you don't want to come at it from your perspective versus like, really coming at them and asking personalized questions and all that kind of stuff. That's where, I've seen other companies do this, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on this here too, is just like, at what point do you hand that off to a real person, to not damage your brand as an overall? So like, is there risks of damaging brand when it's like automation, you're going to get these text messages here and then they just get annoying here as well.
That's a really good question. I would say, I've maybe had several thousand customer conversations. There's always, every company I talk to has like 4 to 5 qualifying questions that are pretty standard, right?
Yep.
That our customer expects, their customer expects, or their lead expects. If you don't have that human component at any point within that process, it maybe, but certainly texting and doing automated texting on qualification questions, no, because they're relatively simple in nature. Like, what's the budget for your project? Have you seen any other quotes? What are you looking for to accomplish? And you can gather all of that information. So when the human portion of your company takes over, they have a wealth of knowledge about who you are, what you're looking for, why you're looking for it. And then you can speak to that as well. It's just like getting, like when I get a demo request form, I get the company name, I get the website, I get the strategies that they're actually interested in. So when I go into that conversation, I can have a good conversation with that individual and protect like Hatch as a brand, but what that customer is actually looking for and really speak to their problems.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I think collecting the basic information is good, but I think when it comes to more complexities and all that kind of stuff, if you're asking budgetary questions or all that kind of stuff, it's like there has to be, like I think using common sense on that side of things as well is like, if this is a qualification question that really should be done over the phone, I think that's a good, barrier there too. It's like, is this a good time for both homeowners to be home? Is a question that we, as doing thousands of text messages to homeowners and setting appointments over text messages, it doesn't go over well over a text message. And, it's too much to explain of the why behind it. It's much easier to do that over a phone call and explain the why. And it seems personal. So, there's certain questions even like that are harder to kind of do over text messaging, versus in person. Or over a phone call. So I think that is a big thing.
Yeah. Sean, can I chime in there real quick?
It.
I think you have to understand where you're at in the conversation process. And so much of this, even though we're talking about rehashing leads today, comes back to, did you get the conversation started off on the right foot? One way or another? Because if you're rehashing old leads, just even to go to Lucy's question in the Q&A here, is a lead from 2013 too old? Well, I don't know. Just based on the average time between when somebody moves and not. But if somebody, I would say that I would keep those conversations in long-term nurture until it's past that average time that nobody's in that house, that they're not in that household anymore, or until they tell you no. But when you go back, one of the things I think text message can do that a lot of other channels can't, especially getting on the phone with somebody, setting up that conversation on the right foot, is send me a picture of what you like. A picture is definitely worth 1,000 words. It can really help to get consumers and contractor pros on the same page. So my landscaping project I just talked about, I got a neighbor across the street. His landscaping is awesome. And I would be more than happy to send you some pictures of what I've seen from them, or describe it, or get on Pinterest or wherever people are going to figure out what they think the requirements are. Let them send you pictures of that. That's more early on in the discovery phase, where you're lead qualifying. When you're following up on deals or quotes that you didn't win, you already have a pretty good idea what they want. So I would try to pitch them a 2-part question. Hey, are your needs still the same as the quote that we gave you at this point in time, or have you changed kind of like your thoughts about what you'd like to get done? You re-engage that conversation, and if they say no, then move on. Then you can mark them as dead and focus on the other conversations.
Yeah, I actually love that, Mark. I love the idea of asking somebody to give you their, like, hey, can you snap a picture of the windows that you want to get replaced, or snap a picture of the bathroom that you're wanting to get redone? And do you have any ideas that you maybe found that you want it to look like when it's done? Like who's
taking screenshots?
Who's
taking screenshots all the time, right? I get screenshot texts all the time from my wife, from my friends, from my brothers. It's like, oh yeah, have you seen this?
Yep.
Think about using that technology and that approach in your lead qualifying and setting that conversation up the right way.
Yeah, I love that. So, I would love for somebody to try that out and give me some feedback of how that went from a feedback standpoint. But no one's asking from that, from like a like normally, like the big thing I see with texting, and really what I see all the time from call centers and companies taking a lead, we hand them over a lead. So a homeowner's going, I want an estimate on this project. And then the contractor's going, well, give me more information, give me more information. And they're not giving anything in return. It's this law of reciprocation, right? If we were like, send me, like how can you give them something and get that other information in return? So like, I think the like we would love to make your dream a reality. Can you send me a picture of what you really want to do? Like that picture is worth 1,000 words. I love that idea. So love to see somebody try that out. That's very a personal approach. That's different than A or B or yes or no is that, when you're asking those questions. So
that's something Hatch can help you do. So if you want to be on the bleeding edge, we can get back to Sean about how well it works. Come talk to us. This is definitely something that our system can do. Automatically reach out to your leads, ask them this type of question and say like, hey, let's start building your dream project. Can you send me pictures?
Yeah, I love it. That one thing I wanted to end on here too, just kind of touching on the other question here. Actually, we have one more question after this, but is that if you have leads in your system from 2013, there are regulations on how long you can text somebody, how long you can call somebody, how long you have their consent. So that is something, I don't know, Mark or Sean, if you have that on the top of your head here, there's certain rules there. So on the texting and phone call side of things, please look into that here as far as how you can call them, how you can text them. From a consent side of things, like that's huge. That's something we've talked with our other partner Active Prospect here quite a bit. It's that TCPA compliance for texting. It's like $500 a text message you can get fined for texting someone without their consent. So you do need that consent. So that's like, we're providing a lead. You have to have written consent that person is okay with you texting them, or they're going to be pretty mad. So
certainly,
email and direct mail and all that kind of stuff can still, even email, you have to have consent there too. So be careful of that in long-term nurtures. But again, if they haven't told you to stop, follow your laws on that side of things. And then you can always email them, and send them to actually direct mail individually. So I think one question that is not going to brought up here is there a best way to ensure all homeowners are present for an estimate here? Sean or Mark, do you guys know? I'm sure you guys ask this question all the time.
Very
sure that's a way to be able to do that. Not only let's talk about not only from the setting side, but also in the confirmation of the appointment as well. So it's kind of typically confirmed in both spots. Absolutely.
I think there's I just attended a conference at Grasso, and this was like a big part of the conversation as well. So it's one of the most difficult things to do, when you're setting an appointment, because you think about the person in the call center, they have numbers they have to hit. So like to your point, Sean, like those types of questions, when you're teeing up that conversation, confirming that appointment, you want to get on the phone and explain the why, like that it's important for both of them to be there. But I think it's important when you're actually confirming the appointment, if they're not going to be there, all decision makers are not going to be there. The worst thing I've seen companies do is just not go and try to reset the appointment. So there's multiple different strategies. Like if you have an appointment, it's at 2 p.m. or 5 p.m. on a Friday or a Thursday or whatever. And let's say the husband, wife, or partner is not there. You should still go, give a presentation, but you should try to reset that appointment. We would call that more of like a rehash campaign. Because, if you trust your sales professionals, and most of the companies we work with do, that's just a different type of rehash strategy. Like, hey, I was at an appointment, one decision maker was there, they need to talk it over. The goal for this rehash campaign is to reset the appointment. But ideally, the sales rep is trained well enough to give a valuable presentation, but also reset that appointment when both parties will be there at the same time. But again, if you're unable to do that via confirmation, I would always say still send the consultant out to the house, give a valuable presentation, and explain the why it's important for both of you to be there at the house to reset that appointment. If all else fails, put it into a reset campaign. and throw them into a rehash campaign and automate that nurture. Yeah, it's one of the most difficult things to do.
And it doesn't hurt to, I don't think, to add on there, it doesn't hurt to ask these questions and to be upfront about it before the appointment or during the scheduling process. Like, who else should be there? Who else should be involved? Like, when can we coordinate a time that works for everybody? You know what I mean? Some of this is on the front end. If you get to the point like Sean's talking about, then obviously you should go, because that's how you keep the conversation warm. But, you know, asking some of these questions as primers and helping them, this is what a lot of consumers are looking for. What is the best practice for planning a home project? Guess what? We don't know. We suck at this. We're relying on the pros, like all the contractors, to help us get this right. You know, so if you can say, hey, it's really a best practice to have all of your decision makers present if possible. How do we find a time that works for everyone? Right? And if they can't do it, they can't do it. And you move the deal along, because that's just how sales works, right? You work with what you've got or what they're willing to give you. But it doesn't, you can kind of prep some of that by asking those questions early on during the sales process. And I mean, I know that sounds like 101. I know a lot of people are already doing that. And like Sean says, this is a problem that's not going away, right? So keep the conversation going, but try to prep them initially and make sure that you help them have those best practices in planning and completing their project.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that the one thing that we talked about with One Leg last week was that the way the customer experience is changing is that and what to do to kind of back to that law of reciprocation is that you are asking them to have both homeowners home. And that's a hard thing for a caller to do. That's a hard thing to do, period. That's a big ask of them, unless you are giving them something sufficient and giving them the value that they're going to receive. So anytime, like, that's where you should mesh this marketing sales, like pull on some sales stuff, go steal what's in their marketing, their sales decks, you know, their sales presentation, and take some of the value that they build on the sales side of things and stick it into your call center, you know, and say, we are this, we're the best company that does this in your area. This is build some value, and then go, and this is why we do it. You know, this is, you know, whether that's over the phone or over a text message, you know, either way, you've got to build value. You've got to give them something, give them a reason why you need both homeowners home. And that's just a hard, like, we plan to close you the same time, the same day. That's, you know, we know that that's the reason, but you have to give them the reason why you even want them there in the first place. So that's awesome. So thank you guys, Mark and Sean. This has been awesome. Kind of diving into the wide open scape that is AI. I can't wait to see where that actually takes both Hatch and the industry as a whole this next year. So it's exciting. The new technology that's coming on. I'm sure we'll have you guys on talking about the new launches that you guys have done and automating everybody's life and the bots that are taking over our jobs. So no, this has been great. Thank you guys both for jumping on here. But thank you, Sean. Thank you, Mark, here again.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, for sure. Have a good one, guys.
You as well.